Black Clover Chapter 363, titled Standing in the Way, opens up with a continuation of Yuno's battle against Lucius as Asta, the hope of the Clover Kingdom, remains on the verge of a glorious return. Lucius continues to take his sweet time against Yuno, leisurely speaking to him about how everyone seems to be rather attached to Asta. Which is kind of funny considering Yuno is Asta's brother, but I guess we can't expect the guy who's using his siblings as human batteries to really appreciate family. According to Lucius, even if Asta were in fact alive somehow, he'd never be able to return to the Clover Kingdom. That's a possibility that Lucius had already prepared countermeasures against. So Lucius still doesn't have any concrete proof of Asta's survival, but is still a variable he's accounted for. Talk about a meticulous villain. Since this is the final arc, I'm expecting to see appearances from foreigners like Mars and Lolopechka. After all, we already had these Sea Temple siblings with Noelle, so I have to wonder if Lucius is accounted for them too. And if so, just how far may he have gone against them, considering they're not necessarily the strongest in the world. And we can't forget the elves of Dryad's Forest. If he's underestimated them, any of those characters may be able to help shift the tide. But stepping away from the Clover Kingdom, we once again find ourselves within the Witch's Forest. Hovering above, we have Paladin Kira and several guardian angels. This invading force immediately set the forest on high alert, causing several massive security golems to spring into action and repel them. The many witches in the forest flew towards the threat on their broomsticks, refusing to let them disturb the doors of destiny. Just then, the trifecta of security golems unleashed simultaneous streams of devastating magma magic towards their enemies. But this was all nothing before Kira's scale magic, Scale Dominate. A far more powerful expression of the scale magic we are seeing for the first time. The unfamiliar witches were baffled by the sight of their efforts being reduced to nothing. As Kira put it, now that he was a paladin, before his scales, all magic tilts in favor of them, the righteous. And truly, what could possibly be more unbalanced than a broken scale? Speeding things along, we'd quickly see just how devastating this force can be, as the many witches of the forest have been defeated and laid out amidst the rubble and broken trees. Looking towards the center of the forest, Kira was already sure of where his targets were. This was his holy task. The future in which he double threatens to destabilize the intended order of the world was one that he could not allow to come to pass. Moments later, the many guardian angels began to pool their mana into a single, concentrated attack. This was all for the sake of ensuring that their master's new world order would become a reality. All the surviving witches could do was look on in horror as this vicious burst of light began racing towards their most sacred location on the brink of utter destruction. Back in the Clover Kingdom, Paladin Morgan was speaking with his former guildmate, Captain Yami. He speaks of how his master sees a path towards a world of peace. And with that, he additionally sees a troublesome disturbance in the Witch's Forest that aims to threaten said world. Attempting to coerce his old friend into giving up, Morgan urged him to be reborn as a paladin too. He'd speak of defending their country together again, like they had during the old Grey Deer days. Yami remained silent for a moment, but back then, their captain wasn't Lucius. It was Julius, the man they both respected. Yami would apologize to Morgan. As far as he was concerned, they couldn't be partners anymore. And this was because he already had his own squad. He'd remind Morgan of what he said before his death, that Yami has a good eye for people and the power to bring them together despite their bluntness. He truly believed that Yami would make for a great Magic Knight captain. I'm still waiting on this battle between Yami and Morgan to really begin. Of course, we have Noelle versus Ossier, which has similarly not been shown much, but this is even less. And with a ton of perfect Lucius clones running around, I'm afraid that may throw off the fun of these fights. Obviously, Paladin Morgan versus Noct is the more enjoyable battle to be had here, as opposed to Paladin Morgan versus Yami, but there is still the mystery of Yami's new biology. With him now being more devil than human, I'm really eager to see how that will impact his abilities, and whether or not that's something Lucius has accounted for. Of course, with Noct currently in a whole different country, with another threat to deal with, it may be a few chapters before we get to see a sibling face-off involving him. So this Clover Kingdom fight is likely to be elongated for a very long time. The bright side is, if they manage to bring back Asta with the Ryuzen 7, then we'll not only have a sibling fight, but maybe even a sibling team-up between Yami and his little sister Ichika. Despite Morgan's prior faith in him, for a while Yami still wasn't sure if he had a good eye for talent or not. But now, as a rune array sprang to life several miles away, Yami understood. The array, which we can assume was either created by Zora or Zora and Magna, easily absorbed the concentrated beam while being surrounded by several of Gauch's mirrors. This combination easily split and spit the attack back at their opponents. This directed the mirrored beams towards the Guardian Angels, and the biggest was saved for Kira himself. There were also blasts of fire from Magna and jolts of lightning from Luck. But despite all these lightspeed attacks, they seem to be nothing before Kira's scale magic, to the point where we didn't even get to see how they fared directly. Kira simply looked on as his enemies emerged from the billowing smoke. From here on out, the Black Bulls vowed to take him down. We've got Zora, Gauch in a new fit, Sekre, Henry, Gray, Noct, Magna, Luck, and Charmy here, all ready for a fight. We know that Finral and Vanessa aren't here because they're busy with the ritual meant to bring Asta home. But I wonder where Gordon might be. Like we said last chapter, scale magic is bound to be really difficult for these guys to go up against, especially now that it has been supercharged to this extent by purified devil power. But the combination potential of the Black Bulls and all their unique abilities is unmatched. Not to mention the fact that we haven't seen these guys in a fight since the time skip, so they're all bound to have new tricks up their sleeves. Zora isn't a new addition to our Black Bulls lineup anymore. It's about time we got to see more spells from him. Besides the trap magic he's most known for, Zora does actually have access to ash magic. But right now, since we're in a forest and have a fire magic user in the form of Magna, maybe he'll be able to expand on that in some interesting way that would normally be beyond his scope. And when it comes to his more famous trap magic, there's absolutely no doubt that he's gotten stronger. His trap magic was able to deflect the combined magical power of 5 Guardian Angels, which, might I remind you, are all lower captain level and all have access to the magical attribute of wind, earth, water, lightning, and fire. And seeing as he wasn't the only one to launch a counterattack here, it stands to reason that this magical array was put together pretty quickly. Back during the Elf Invasion arc, he struggled to do the same thing against the combined magical power of 5 mages that each harnessed a different element. That's some pretty insane development. Not to mention the size of this thing and how high up in the air it was. Now, Gauch is probably my least favorite member of the Black Bulls, but I will never sleep on how absurdly useful his mirror magic is. With it, he can easily turn a squad into an army and launch omnidirectional attacks. He can both strengthen his allies' attack power and reflect his enemies' attacks back at them. Besides the improved strength, this also does wonders for mana conservation. Zora's biggest and most complex traps consume a lot more time and mana, so combining with something like mirror magic can ensure that he gets more bang for his buck. And if Asta's Demon Slayer was able to quadruple the power of a spell deflected by counter trap, I can only imagine the exponential multiplier mirror magic could provide. Sekre is the absolute cure of this fight. Although she's not necessarily a healer like Gray can be, she can seal away any sort of pain or fatigue, allowing these guys to fight without restrictions. But more importantly, she can unseal just about anything. Meaning, if she can get her hands on Kira, she can release him from Lucius's brainwashing. Although I'm not a huge fan of the whole Mecha Bull thing, I think Henry is awesome. And his ability to pretty much be a magical parasite is something I would love to see against Kira's scale magic. Noct is plenty strong as it is. And again, we are waiting on his battle against Morgan. So although he's not about to be dead weight here, I'm expecting to see his best at a later point. All the shadow hands everywhere do make me think that he's still really scary though. But for the sake of not leaving him out here, the ability to perform Devil Union with all 4 of his contractors at the same time would be epic. Gray's transmutation magic is an absolute wild card here. Being in a forest, there's just so much for her to work with. When it comes to Magna, after his battle against Dante, anything is possible with this guy. He's already proven that when magical power is balanced out, he can still come out on top. Luck is crazy strong across the board. I would love to see more of his lightning battle fiend form. From what little we've seen of it, he was able to effortlessly decapitate 4 mid-tier devils. With so much time since then, I think we can expect him to have already taken this form to the next level. And lastly, we have Charmy on her Nimbus Cloud. She's still a huge mystery that I need to know more about. That wolf and taller form of hers are way too cool. We still know next to nothing about dwarves and Black Clover, so I think we deserve some answers. I'm not sure if this fight will be the one, but she does look pretty menacing up there, so fingers crossed. Seeing them all, Kira was unimpressed by the rekindled desire to oppose him. He could only see the Black Bulls as foolish sinners who had yet again decided to side with the devil. Like My Hero Academia last week, this was a pretty short chapter, but for some reason, it felt a bit more satisfying. If you follow both stories, let me know if you feel the same way. Black Clover is on break next week, so hopefully when we return, there will be even more to dive into. As always, I'm Flexible Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.